When you're ready, gently allow your attention to come up to the solar plexus, just below the rib cage in the front. And feel into that space. Many of us have a knot there. Just breathe into that knot, allow it to be whatever it is. Hold your attention there in the space between the breaths and ask it to release. Just hold your attention there and allow whatever needs to unravel to unravel. And if your energy jumps to your head, just bring it back with your breath. And as you engage this energy, you may need to take your attention deeper in your body again, back down to the tip of the tailbone, so that your awareness can settle. And you can always do a circulation between the tip of the tailbone and the solar plexus to get that circle flowing. Just feel into that for a minute or two. Circling from the solar plexus down to the tip of the tailbone and back up. Now gently allow your attention to rise to your heart center in the middle of your chest. And just hold your attention there. Feeling in between the breaths. And again, keep dropping your awareness out of your head and into your heart. Attention is your tool. Gently allow your attention to rise to your throat. And at your own pace to the third eye, and then out the top of your head. And we'll just be quiet for a few minutes while we all feel into this mechanism in the way that's right for each of us. Now, holding your attention inside, totally inside, gently allow your eyes to open, but hold your attention inside. And just feel into that difference of how it is to be two places at once in yourself. And what a different perspective it is to have your attention out of your head. So we want to talk a little bit about how to use your attention to and the Anasa temple to release these knots that we discover in ourselves that sort of overlie one or more of the energy centers as we're working inside. So what you can do is go to an Anasa temple and ask them to help you heal this part of yourself that you don't have total access to. And you visualize yourself on a treatment table, and you ask the guides to help you become your highest, best self. Always the intention is to align with that divinity. That is an alignment with the whole of creation. And that harmony is what will support our participation in the creation that is happening in every moment of our existence. And that creation expresses itself inside us as change, as a dynamic system, which is what we are. And most of the time, we're resisting it as much as possible because we want things to stay the same so that we can kind of get a grip. And what that grip does is it keeps us from participating in the flow of the moment. And it's actually in that flow that we experience the pure raw connection to life itself. And this happens when we are participating with our whole being in whatever's unfolding in front of us. And it's when we actually forget ourselves. It's what people talk about when they call being in the zone. It's when you're part of a dynamic flow that's bigger than you. You can feel it, you're participating in it. And it's what attracts people to, extreme sports, or not extreme sports, but to performance. I mean, we certainly have that when we play music sometimes. But as we participate in the whole in that way, where we're in that participation is actually surrender. It's a kind of giving up of trying to get a grip and just being in the flow. And it's not the same as it's an allowing without control. That's how I could say it. So we don't exactly have an agenda. Or we may have an agenda, but it's unfolding according to a certain logic that is beyond our mind. And it's interesting because trying to describe this experience is very much the experience we often have when we try to talk about daily experience that is beyond three-dimensional awareness. And three-dimensional awareness is limited by our language, which is three-dimensional in its entirety. So you say something like in the zone, and it really doesn't have any meaning except to describe a dynamic experience that we hope everyone shares at some point in their lives. and begins to live more and more from that connection, that feeling of connection to the whole. And it's something that's so unfamiliar in our culture. And yet, having experienced it once, we try to get it back. And spiritual practice is really that practice of centering ourselves in the zone, which is actually most reliably experienced in the space between the breaths. When we really drop our attention out of our head into one of the energy centers or the ultimate energy center, and we just are available to experience. There's no just about it. It doesn't need a qualifier. We are available to experience the source of experience itself. We welcome your questions. So happy you're here. How may we serve today? We're so happy to be here with you all. Drawing a little bit of a blank, so we need you to ask a question so we get a new thread. Or we can sit in silence, that's okay too. Yes.
Elaborate a bit on when you go to the Anasa temple, and you get on the table and ask them to heal you. Well, I'm talking to them, I suppose, but I guess I'm having an issue, or sometimes I'm not sure about the pronouns and how.
Well,
much of this is
pronouns are
collective and how much is this a field and how much is this.
right. It's okay. So the question is, when you go to the Inazha temple, it's really a question about the unity, the oneness of life itself, and the diversity, and how can things be dual and non-dual at the same time? We think that's at the bottom of your question. And so the Inazha temple is a tool. It's an imagery in three-dimensional language for how we can heal ourselves, because most of us do not have the confidence in ourselves to connect to divinity that is within us. So it's a way to get around this lack of self-esteem, is really what it is, that almost every human being in this culture has, in our attempt to communicate and ultimately be in union with that which is our source. So we are conditioned to experience everything that really supports us from beyond our daily perception. We are conditioned to experience that as other, and something that comes from outside of us and saves us. That's what we're mostly looking for in our culture. We are conditioned to that. And so to get around that conditioning, we are giving an image of a space, which is actually a space within yourself, which is the Inazha temple, but we created as a space outside of ourselves that's completely safe, where the consciousness of divinity is completely available to us. And we allow ourselves to release our conditioning in that space so that we can experience ourselves in union with divinity. Is it a trick? Yes, but it's not really a trick because it works. Because when we allow ourselves to feel that experience, that is the whole point. The Inazha temple is irrelevant. It's a construct that we're using to get you to allow yourself to experience that which we have found. Well, we have some opinion about that, which doesn't allow us to contact it in another way. We don't just allow ourselves to be in alignment with divinity as a natural course of who we are. So we have to, in order to share that experience with you, because we're not separate. Nothing is separate. You know, we have this idea that this body that we have, that our skin, which is completely porous, is a protection from that which is not us. But really, this body is, it's not a delusion, because we actually experience and we relate to each other, and we have a whole world. But that arises out of something so much more fulfilling in terms of experience, that we're pointing to that with every image, every way that we can be part of your reality, that can draw you into the experience of ultimate fulfillment. Sorry, my own phone It's not turned off. Now it is. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Because we contain within ourselves that which is needed to heal us, to empower us to become in union with that which is our source. We contain all of it, but we don't believe it. And our belief system limits our experience. And so we try to provide a construct that takes you outside of that belief system and allows you to relax into yourself, into your beingness, out of the doingness. And then when we have cultivated beingness long enough, we start to be, and the doing happens from the being. And then there's a whole different way of life and a whole different experience of ourselves in union with that which is our source. And the way this unfolds in a human being is that the experiences of that union get closer together for most people. I mean, some people it just opens up and then that's where they are forever. They don't, it just comes. And they can't understand why it doesn't happen for everybody. But for the vast majority of human beings, we have an experience of union and then it disappears. And we want it back. And what happens is as we do our work, those experiences get closer and closer together. And that it unfolds. And then our doing and our being starts to overlap some. And it's like that. It's a process, a dynamic process where we're kind of running in and out of the room of conscious awareness, which is a space within us waiting to expand. We hope that makes sense.
I think that part of it is the awareness, but is a goal, but devotion may be a key to not just devotion to Anasa, but then that devotion to unity, devotion to.
So what Andrew is saying is that he's saying that he thinks that devotion is a key part of this experience. And that's absolutely correct. So then the question becomes, what are we devoted to? Who are we devoted to? And where is the best place for us to put that devotion to really have it work? And what we become devoted to is our own union with the highest. So we don't exactly ask, what would Jesus do? We ask, what's in the highest best? And that automatically engages that union that we're working on, every day when we sit in meditation and explore that union. It's not devotion to Anasa, and the Anasa temple is a tool. It's not a limitation. It's a tool to help us to get deeper and deeper inside ourselves. And the way it's lined up, when you understand how porous we are, when we ask for help, that help comes. And does it come from outside of us? Well, yes and no, because everything is inside us. So this inside outside, it's energy doesn't stop at the boundary of our being. We have layers that extend out that are not physical, that are constantly involved in experience. And as we cultivate our inner awareness and experience ourselves as energy, then this conversation makes more and more sense. So what we are devoted to is becoming the highest best, which is also a great oversimplification, but it gives us a direction and a feeling for the familiarity with that union. See, the whole concept of good and bad, good and evil, all of that stuff disappears when we go toward union, because so much of our idea of good and evil has to do with life and death and avoiding death or pretending that it doesn't happen, that it's easy to get confused. So if we just talk about union with the whole, and we understand that great wisdom comes from that union, then we can be at ease in it. Because we've met people who truly are in union, or we've read books by them. So we know that wisdom and fulfillment is a human possibility. And it doesn't just have to be 1 in every 3 billion. You know, the limitation is our willingness to allow ourselves to unwind all the things that we think should be and let go into what is. So yes, devotion. Devotion is really, really important. And what we're devoted to is our own union. And it helps, you know, to have conversations like this, to be in a place where other people are also seeking that union. But it has nothing to do with exactly with being devoted, well, especially with being devoted to another outside of us. It's all about our own fulfillment. Anything else? Yeah. Thanks. That's a good thread. Yes. Hi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. I'm being very careful about not saying your name.
Well, I have to say I've been really up against the wall lately with my health.
Oh,
And but to be listening to what you're talking to, you know, to unwind. And yeah, I've had a lot going on and been to the emergency room, had an MRI,
oh my
and
God.
I'm dealing, I guess, with a vestibular migraine. And but also I'm getting a lot of hints. I'm seeing a lot of my conditioning. I've had some trauma appear that I had pushed down, but I also have some awareness that I have an opportunity to see those things, that conditioning that is wants to fire on me of and wanting to hold on. So we're talking right to a perfect conversation for me right now. I'm sure others, but I'm particularly so how to be with all this and how to merge and to be with the NASA and perhaps I think looking at this as an opportunity. It must be.
That's the key. That's
It must
absolutely
be.
the key, that
Yeah.
when a trauma starts to unravel within us and tell us about ourselves, about what
Yeah.
happened that created whatever pattern in us, that is an enormous gift.
Mm,
It's unavoidable. The challenge part of it is unavoidable.
yes.
But when it can be seen as a gift to go deeper, and the physical symptoms as an invitation to just be quiet
Yeah.
and really take our attention to a different part of ourselves as much as possible.
Yes.
And physical symptoms they're just the hardest because we
Yeah.
can't get away from them. We
Yeah.
just can't. There's
Yeah.
nothing we
Not too much.
and so to look for where the love is and to understand that love never abandons us. It's us who abandon love,
Yes.
regardless of what our experience is.
Mm-hmm.
And see, this is exactly the complexity that we were reaching to address in the discussion of good and evil, and how
Yes.
union is beyond that, because there's a way in which we would look at our physical pain and other symptoms as complete betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
That's
It
our
does come
tendency.
up.
Yes, that's our tendency. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
union is supposed to be about bliss, not about betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we die.
Yeah, it's all in
And
the same package.
yes, it's all part of the same thing. And so the real union is that equanimity,
Mm-hmm.
that peace within whatever, the understanding that union is transcendent of pain,
Mm-hmm.
and that we can be in pain and not suffering when we understand that the fulfillment is actually to be found in our total acceptance and surrender into whatever is in the moment, in our total acceptance, and we stop fighting and we just say, okay, this is what is. Even for a moment, when we do that, we slip into the center, that space between the breaths. And we can say, this is God awful,
Yeah.
but it's union in the
Like that.
same moment. And then there's kind of a despair and a fulfillment in the same place.
Yeah.
And there's a sweetness of
Mhm.
acceptance that makes them not different. And
Yeah.
that's equanimity.
I know what you're getting at. Yeah.
It's so hard to describe.
God awful. I love it.
Well, it's that picture of the yin yang
Yeah.
with the black and the white and the dot of white and the black and the dot of black and the
Yes.
white. It's like that is the union. It's the complete acceptance of all pain.
Yeah.
And then the allowing of ourselves to not suffer in the pain. Say, okay, this happened. You know, I was terribly traumatized. This is the human condition. We're all traumatized. And it's varying degrees. And we would not wish it on anyone. But it's a fact of being that, you know, our lives are not pain-free.
Yeah. The blessing, perhaps.
Well, when we look back on our lives and we look at the most painful experiences we've ever had are also the experiences that cause us to look for fulfillment.
Yes. That's
And
right.
they're the experiences that make us grow the most as human beings, that bring us into an experience of empathy with others, so that we can say, oh my God, I feel your pain. And that's the truth. And it's because we have experienced it ourselves.
Right.
So we have the room to allow other people to react, and we can be a ground. And we can then allow ourselves to react and not react to our reaction like, oh, because I'm suffering, woe is me. That means I'm never going to know God because I'm suffering. You know, we reject ourselves in all thousands,
All
billions of
kinds of
ways.
things, all kinds of things have been coming up. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And usually it's about, you know, we use challenges to reject ourselves and our potential for union.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We use them as proof of our unworthiness, which is,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
not true. Nobody's worthy and nobody's unworthy. It's just
yeah.
not like that. That's a
A
very
lot.
Puritan thing that we
Yeah. A
all have
lot.
been exposed to, you know.
A lot of that comes up, and then also I'm going, wait a minute.
Yes.
Wait a
Yeah.
minute. So yeah, it's a heck of a, I always look at it as a blessing, really. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
But it's hard. You know, you can hold that for 10 minutes and then it's like, wait a minute, the reality really sucks here. So
You have
maybe it's
to
not such a
realize
blessing.
this is what is just going on right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of my wanting it to be different is not, yeah. So learning, and this is perfect. Thank you for today.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
so welcome. Oh my God. Oh,
Anyway, I'm going to come and see Andrew today. So
good.
yeah.
Good.
So anyway, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, he's hugging you in the
Thank you so much.
breastfeed. You're so welcome. We all have this. We all have it, you know. And the greatest challenge is not to reject ourselves in the midst of adversity. And the flip side is not to get arrogant when we experience the opposite. Mm-hmm. And there's everything in between, every experience in between. And we don't know anybody who hasn't experienced suffering. And fortunately, I don't think we know anybody who hasn't experienced joy, at least for a moment. And we're going to, life is such a dynamic system that health is truly when we are experiencing what we are experiencing in the moment, and our emotions are flowing with that, not with some old pattern that we think is being enacted inside of us. And with that attitude, we begin to see those old patterns as patterns. And anything that we can identify as a pattern, we can begin to dissolve by taking our energy out of it. And the way we take our energy out of an old pattern is by feeling where that pattern happens in our body, where the restriction is. And for many, many, many of us, it's right in the solar plexus. And doing that flow downward, that we, in the circle between the tip of the tailbone and the solar plexus, and then having a meditation circle that we do from out the top of our head down to our solar plexus and back up, that is also a practice. And then the union of the two is the infinity symbol that happens with the solar plexus at the center. And that gives us a way to unify the whole thing in a different energetic experience. And that knot can begin to unwind in a different way. And that figure 8 goes in both directions. An infinity symbol, or we'll say either direction. And then gradually what we do as we experience that flow is we just allow our energy to make it a little bit bigger, to make the space that flow occupies within us a little bit wider road, that path. And we'll feel some resistance as that old pattern starts to wash out. But these are the steps to open that solar plexus. And as we discover blocks in our internal energy system, we can work on them any way we can think of. It's the energy doesn't go just in one direction or one pattern. It's beyond our imagination. We simplify it so that our awareness can gradually come into it and cultivate. And we dream of a time when everybody does Qigong first thing in the morning in the streets to align their energy with their body before they begin their day. We were in Taiwan a long time ago, early 80s, maybe 1984. And in the morning, you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's out in the street, in the squares, doing Qigong, Tai Chi. They're all doing it, getting their energy centers wake in the morning. So beautiful. Cultivating that union. Every ancient tradition has some recognition of the energy patterns that exist within us. And our benefit as we come into greater and greater union with the source of that energy. How may we serve further? How may we serve further? Yes.
So, how may we support another person's well being without interfering?
Well, the simplest, most effective way is to go to the Inasa temple and speak with their highest self. And we say the Inasa temple because it is a protected space where we are by our assumptions that we make in that space, where it is a space that exists within us that is for the highest good, where we go to cultivate that highest we'll use the word grace, because we are cultivating the love and fulfillment aspect of well-being that we wish to share, that we wish to be there for those that we love. So we are in that space in ourselves, wishing the other well with everything that we have that's good. Everything that we have. We drop our judgment and we expand our willingness to love whatever their choice, and our prayer that their choice lead them to the highest fulfillment possible. Often, the way we can most effectively allow for change in another person is to take our energy out of the situation, because very often our energy of disapproval or some lesser our energy in the situation is creating a reaction that encourages the person to continue along a line that we would not support if we were asked. And so our energy can be the creation of the source of the reaction in them, which is fueling the behavior pattern that we would like to change. We can never change another. They can only change themselves. But if we take our energy of disapproval out of the situation by turning our own energy into love, the love that is the source of our connection to that person in the first place, then that has an effect that we cannot predict, except that it will be different from what we have been projecting onto that situation previously. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
So the minimum we're doing is taking our disapproval out of the situation. The maximum we're doing is infusing the situation with love and our faith that that love will guide the person. And create some connection, which is what we're really looking for, is connection with that person in a way that can make the flow of appreciation between the two sides greater. That's what we're looking for in every relationship. It's the flow that connects us to the love that we want to experience and become ourselves.
I'm wondering, I hear the suggestion that one take the energy that would be disapproving back and kind of turn it into love. I mean, there is love there, of course, but
Well, it's not exactly taking the energy of disapproval back. It's dissolving the energy of disapproval. It's understanding that disapproval serves no one. Disapproval is similar to shutting down a part of ourselves. Because what we disapprove of in others is what we would really be horrified if it existed within us. And it does, or we wouldn't be disapproving of it. And this isn't meant to be personal. This is, you know, we don't have the information to make it personal. And we just know this is the pattern, that when we disapprove of something, it's something that we see in ourselves that we cannot live with. That's a gross oversimplification, but it kind of works. And so if we allow ourselves to stop punishing that energy wherever it exists, doesn't matter where it exists, we just allow it to dissolve, fall out of us, the desire to punish that energy, that thing that we want to no longer exist. We just stop fighting it. We let go of our end of the rope.
somehow that felt like abandoning, but I can see it in a different way.
Well, as that dissolves, you follow it with love. That's not abandoning at all. That's allowing. That's allowing. It's like you take off what you perceive to be a rein that you have on the other person, that you would like to restrain them in some way, or something about whatever it is that you would like this to not exist. And you just stop with that. Because everything we imagine we are doing to another person, we are actually doing to ourselves. That's how we begin to understand that energy, is that we are actually putting that rain on ourselves. That part of ourselves that experience the same, that is identifying. We just let go. And a lot of that letting go has to do with just taking our attention to a different place inside us, so that we're not grabbing hold of this desire to control a pattern. We're letting it go. And every time we think of the person, we just wish them well. And we forget about that pattern. We dissolve it in ourselves. That thing that wishes they were different. We just let it go. Because part of our holding to that pattern of wishing they were different is keeping that pattern in place, because we're putting energy into that pattern itself. We withdraw all our energy, and it's just that we dissolve that thing in ourselves that even recognizes that there's a pattern. We'll use the simplest one. We don't know the situation, so we'll just use a simple one that say we have somebody that we're connected to who has an addiction. So we forget about the addiction. We just wish the person well. Every time we think of them, we wish them well. We let go. We understand that the addiction is their problem to deal with, and we can't help unless they come and ask us. If they come and ask us, that's a whole different situation. But most people that, we're related to are not going to come to us to ask for solutions, because we're too tangled up with them. So the most we can do is untangle ourselves, just let go of any opinion we have about that. And every time we think of them, we wish them well. And every time we see them, we enjoy whatever we can about being with them. And we don't even think about that part. We don't put any energy there, in or out. It's none of our business unless they make it our business. And in taking our energy out of that situation and just putting love in, it allows something to change. At least in us. And when it changes in us, then something happens with them also. But we don't do it because we want something to happen in them. The only thing we do because we want something to happen in them is love. We completely bless them with our thoughts.
Thank you. I remember now. This has happened before.
Yeah, we've had this conversation a lot of times with ourselves, because it's every insight we get it's living experience. And the more we have these same insights, the more we are developing bigger and bigger patterns that allow us to love ourselves and then everybody else. And then it starts coming back at us. So we're at our magic. Let's meditate for a few more minutes before we close. And I have to say, next week we're playing a concert out of town, so we won't be here on Sunday next week, but we'll be back the following week. And we love this so much, and it wouldn't be possible without you. So we're grateful. So much gratitude. Mm. See you in 2 weeks. Bye for now.
Thank you.